Campea, and maybe if I switch over to the right mic, and it is an honor and a privilege to have you guys joining me here today on this Sunday, where we talk about all of our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all that kind of good stuff. So here's how today's show is going to go. I have picked out 4 questions that you guys have emailed into me, 4 big topics. How do you get a topic or a question on the John Campea Show? It's simple. You just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put that word topic in the subject line. And as always, guys, keep those emails to 90 words or less. Once we get through those 4 main topics, we're going to go to your live questions. So without any further ado, let's dive into it. And the first question today comes to us from one of our Patreon supporters, Christian Corbett, who writes, why hasn't Marvel made an Iron Man 4? Iron Man / Robert Downey Jr. has been arguably one of the biggest draws to the MCU. No, that's not the only reason to make a 4th installment. I was just curious. All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. And yes, there is no denying. Like, Cap and Chris Evans is my favorite character in the MCU right now. But you cannot deny the importance of Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man. It was the Iron Man movie that got the entire MCU kicked off. Robert Downey Jr. is one of the biggest draws to all that. And he is certainly one of those guys who is clearly born to play the role. I mean, I completely believe that, hey, actors are interchangeable. You can go out, no matter how good you think one actor is in a particular role, there is somebody else out there who may even be better. So you can replace actors. That's the way I look at it. That's my philosophy. However, even I will tell you, that's going to be really, really tough to do with Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man. It's a tough one to do. It is one of the tougher ones to do. Absolutely, no doubt. So the question is, where has Iron Man 4 been? Well, I mean, let's look at the MCU since Iron Man 3. The MCU has been packed. There has simply been no room to do an Iron Man 4 as of yet. And by the way, it's not like Iron Man hasn't had a very big presence in the MCU since Iron Man 3. He's been in all the Avengers films. He's in Spider-Man Homecoming, Civil War. I mean, they've put him all over the place. Now, that doesn't take away from the notion of doing an Iron Man 4. But again, the MCU's been very packed. It's not like Robert Downey Jr. hasn't had a presence. He's been present in almost everything they've been doing since Iron Man 3. But Iron Man 3 is one of the most profitable MCU films of all time. Now, Black Panther just barely crossed Iron Man 3 at the box office. But Iron Man 3 is one of the $1 billion club movies. It's $1.2 billion Iron Man 3 made. You have to assume if you crank out an Iron Man 4, minimum, I'm talking minimum, you're going to make at the box office on that is $800+ million. Bare floor minimum. And if it's great, you're looking at another 1.2, maybe a $1.3 billion film with a Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. led Iron Man 4. I believe it is very conceivable. And actually, you know what? I would put my money on the fact that they've got plans for an Iron Man 4. Now, that of course goes against the grain of some people, a lot of people believing that, Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man and Tony Stark die in Infinity War or maybe Avengers 4. That's totally possible. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I do think they're going to do an Iron Man 4. I think it'll come after Infinity War. And look, I think there's one of the big reasons they haven't announced an Iron Man 4, a Black Panther 2, a Doctor Strange 2, another Captain America film, another Thor film, another whatever, blah, blah, blah. I think the only movie we have announced from the MCU other than Spider-Man Homecoming 2 is the fact that they just don't want to give away who lives and who dies. Because you announce, I talked about this on the John Campea Show the other day. You announce that you have Captain America, the Great Adventure, right? Whatever you name the next Captain America movie. You announce that movie before Infinity War comes out, or maybe even before Avengers 4, and fans are going to lose their minds. Fans will revolt because they'll peg that as a giant spoiler. They're like, why are you announcing this now? That movie's not for another 3 years. Why are you announcing this now? You just ruined Infinity War for us. Blah, 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 blah. Same thing goes with Iron Man. Now, look, I'm not telling you Iron Man is surviving out of Avengers 4. I just think he will personally. And I think the reason we haven't gotten any sort of an announcements of an Iron Man 4 is for the same reason why I don't think there's been any announcements about a Captain America movie. Possible Captain America dies, but I think beyond that, even if he doesn't die, they don't want to announce that yet. So I believe there's a strong chance we get an Iron Man 4. I believe there's a strong chance they may already have it planned. And I think Iron Man 4 will probably deal with a lot of the repercussions of the events of the MCU. Much like Iron Man 3, you had Tony dealing with the repercussions of the events of the Avengers, right? Which I thought was great. I thought that was the best part of Iron Man 3, was there actually being ongoing consequences of what happens to these characters. And, you know, Tony goes through this traumatic experience that no human being should be, going through a wormhole in space to find this invading alien army coming to destroy humanity. That'll mess with your head. And in Iron Man 3, we saw that. It messed with his head. I think we are going to get an Iron Man 4. I think we're going to see a Tony now dealing with even more stuff, whether it's the death of Pepper, the death of several of his teammates, the mass destruction that happens in the world as a result of the events of Infinity War and Avengers Part 4. I mean, there's all this types of stuff that's going on. So I do believe we're going to get it. The fact that Iron Man 3 made $1.2 billion at the box office is one of those things that I think, and I could be totally wrong here. I'm not saying this is a guarantee. I could be totally wrong about this. And I'm not going to be shocked if I am. But the fact that Iron Man 3 made $1.2 billion, to me, even if Kevin Feige wanted to kill off Tony Stark, even if Kevin Feige wanted to kill off Tony Stark in Infinity War or Avengers Part 4, the fact that Part 3 made $1.2 billion, to me, it would be enough that Bob Iger would probably or Alan Horn would step in and go, Kevin, we appreciate your artistic vision, but you're not killing off Tony Stark. Not until you at least give us an Iron Man 4. Because Iron Man 3 made $1.2 billion at the box office. Can you imagine how the execs at Disney, Kevin Feige's bosses, Alan Horn, Bob Iger, would respond if Kevin Feige went to them today and said, you know what? I don't think we're going to do a Black Panther 2. Alan Horn would pat Kevin Feige on the head and go, oh, that's so cute, Kevin. Yes, you are. You are doing a Black Panther 2. That movie just made $1.2 billion at the box office. You are doing a Black Panther 2. I kind of feel like it's just one of those situations that even if Kevin wanted to kill off Iron Man, I just got a feeling Bob Iger and Alan Horn would go, oh, that's adorable, Kevin. Kevin, that is adorable. But no, we got to do it. And again, I'm not going to fall out of my chair with shock if they do kill off Tony Stark. I'm not saying it's any kind of a guarantee, but my theory right now is this, is that they already have plans for an Iron Man 4. It just makes far too much money at the box office. He's far too central of a character right now. And maybe Iron Man 4 will be his send-off. Who knows? Maybe Iron Man 4 will be the send-off. But even though I could be 100% wrong about that, I believe that is what's going to happen. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. But I'm sure you guys have 1,000 other theories as well. Jump down into the comments section and leave me your thoughts. And now I got this image of my head of Kevin Feige standing in front of Bob Iger and Alan Horn saying, yeah, we want to kill off Tony in this. And them just going, oh, that's adorable, Kevin. You're adorable. But no, I just can't get that out of my head now. All right, let's move on now to the next topic. And the next topic comes to us from Gary Richardson, who writes, hey, John, big fan of the show. Thank you so much, Gary. I just saw Pacific Rim Uprising, and I found myself asking, well, first of all, I'm glad you saw it, because I don't think a whole ton of people are seeing it. Let's see. I just saw Pacific Rim Uprising, and I found myself asking why action movies recently have felt the need to put in kids. Transformers last night did it, and now Pacific Rim, but for what purpose? Just to get younger people to go see the movie? In both of those movies, the young girl did nothing for the plot in any way to my mind, and I'm pretty confident teens would want to go see these movies anyway. So why? Well, first of all, Gary, let's be careful. Like when we're talking about one or two movies, let's be careful not to pretend like it's a big, wide industry thing. Yes, last year we saw Transformers Last Night feature this young girl in the trailers who ultimately did nothing in the movie. And now we have Pacific Rim Uprising featuring this character, Amara. And the young actress who played her Carly, I want to say her name is. Anyway, the young actress who played her, I think she did a very good job playing the role. But the character ultimately, to me, was a waste. It was a pointless character that they just asked me to stretch my imagination a little bit too far for the character, but whatever. But these are 2 examples over the course of the last year. So let's not say, why are movies doing this, when it's really 2 out of the last 400 films that have come out have done it. So let's put that into context. As to why they would do it. Now, you would say, and you do say in your email, and I understand where you're coming from, saying teens would want to see it anyway. Well, yes, but the reason they put in these kids is the same reason why the old Captain America comic books introduced us to Bucky. It's the same reason the old Detective Comics introduced this new little sidekick for Batman, Robin. Because while we can say, and you're not wrong in saying that, hey, a lot of teenagers want to say this anyway, you cannot deny, it's been proven that when you show kids, it appeals to kids. Kids get more excited about it when they see someone that's more reflective of who they are. They proved it with Detective Comics. They proved it with Captain America. They've proved it in movies forever. Believe me, they've done multi-million-dollar studies on these things. These movie execs know, and the marketing execs know where to appeal. And so why we can say, well, a bunch of teenagers want to see it anyway, that's fine, but you increase your appeal. Remember, I'm talking from a marketing point of view. I'm not talking about from a quality of the movie point of view. I'm simply talking from a marketing point of view. From a marketing point of view, whatever you can do to even increase more your appeal and increase the base that you're appealing to, well, then you kind of do it. That is especially true in that Transformers movie. Like, having that little girl in the trailers made it seem like she was going to be the central figure, and she was totally pointless to the movie. This Amara character, again, to me, was completely pointless to the movie. The things they had her do in the movie could have easily been done with other plot devices, but whatever. So that's why they do it, because it does increase the market appeal. It does get kids more interested, and if more kids are interested, that increases your box office a little bit. By how much, that's up for debate. Whether it increases it by 1% or 5% or whatever, that's up for debate, but it does make a difference. Now, that being said, I fundamentally agree with you. It does kind of take me out a little bit. It's like, oh, like it, and it's not just kids in movies. Whenever I am in a movie and I begin to recognize that there's this thing in this movie that is strictly here for its marketing appeal, like not here to benefit the narrative, whatever it is, whether it's a young kid or whether it's any kind of device. Whatever kind of device is there, it's clear that this is only here for the marketing appeal and not for the benefit of the narrative. Then that becomes a distraction to me and it starts to bug me. And having little kids in action roles, unless it's strictly a kid movie, that is one of the things that really bothers me. Because in Transformers, your example, clear example of that. That little girl's in the marketing strictly to try to increase their appeal marketing-wise. I feel like the Amara character was strictly in there to try to appeal to young children so they can get their parents to make them come. So now you got the parents and the kids coming. Other than that, it is something that bothers me. I mean, I get it, though. I do understand it. I understand why they do it. I just wish that in the case of Transformers or in the case of Pacific Rim Uprising, that if you're going to do it, make sure you give them narrative weight. Give them a firm narrative purpose in their movie. If you want to put these marketing elements into your movie, that's fine. Then just make sure you double down on making sure that those characters are now furthering the narrative and really playing an active, vital role in the narrative. When you do that, then I'm totally fine with it. I'm totally fine, because you're making a better movie as a result. I'm fine with it. But when you just go, hey, we need to put this kid in here for marketing purposes, we don't really need them to do anything, just put him in. That's when it becomes a distraction. That's when it really starts to bother me and pisses me off as a film goer. And it just becomes really, really obvious. So that's why they do it. But I agree with you. It is kind of an annoyance. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Andrew Nosal, who writes, I've got a quick question to ask you about the genre of musicals. With the recent success of movies like Moana, La La Land, Sing, Beauty and the Beast, Coco, and The Greatest Showman, should studios start opening up the floodgates to create more of these types of films? They are somehow finding audiences every single time they hit theaters, and you always see their albums up in the number 1 or 2 spot in iTunes. Thanks, and keep up the great work. All right, well, thanks a lot for the question, man. And there's one thing I want to kind of point out in your question here before I answer it, and that is our definition of a musical. So, for instance, La La Land is a musical. I would say Greatest Showman is a musical. But a number of the movies you pointed out, I would strictly say are not musicals. They are movies that have a couple of musical numbers in them, but a couple of musical numbers does not a musical make. I mean, a true musical is when, like, the majority of your story is propelled on by the music. I mean, it's just every couple of beats, there's new music, another music number, like all throughout the film. That's just not the case with Moana. That's not the case with Coco. That's not even the case with Sing. That's not a case with a lot of those films. And I think a lot of those films are just like, for instance, a couple of them are just Pixar films that were great stories and they're going to do great. And a part of their movies is they throw in a couple of musical numbers. That's fine. But I don't consider those to be musicals. Musicals are when the entire movie is based around and propelled by and is inhabited by musical numbers that are just become the story in and of themselves. That's why, you know, Greatest Showman works. That's why Les Mis works. But I do think there is a big difference between the two. So understanding that I look at it differently than you do, which that doesn't mean you're wrong. I'm just saying I look at it differently than you do. Since I look at it differently than you do, that, you know, I only consider a couple of those things you mentioned to be actual musicals, all right? So I will consider La La Land a musical. I will consider Greatest Showman a musical. Those two are musicals. Why don't they throw open the floodgates? Well, because just having a couple of examples of success does not a trend make. You know, just having 2 examples, and, you know, Greatest Showman nearly didn't do well at all. It's only the fact that Greatest Showman had such incredible legs that it was able to hang in there. But, you know, the initial appeal, that movie didn't break box office records on opening weekend. People didn't rush out to see that movie. People were not interested in Greatest Showman, other than me. People were not all that interested in Greatest Showman when it first came out. It got a little lucky in the sense that it was really fun and enjoyable to watch, and word of mouth spread, and it just had great legs and just hung around the top 10, hung around the top 10, hung around the top 10, and eventually became profitable. But it's not like it was busting the doors off. So I think the musical genre is still something you gotta be very careful with. It's something that, you know, like La La Land, while it was incredible and won all sorts of awards, I mean, it didn't break box office records either. So you got to be careful with the musical genre. You got to make sure you get one that's going to nail and can be appealing as a motion picture and will have some marketability. And that's tough. And the fact that they put out a few this past year that have been really good, I think is amazing. I think it's astounding. But you got to just be careful about how many of those you make, because they can go south really quick if you're not careful. All right. Final emailed in question today. And the final emailed in question today comes to us from John Roseler, who writes, because Spider-Man reboot into the MCU, can DC still have similar levels of success, since the MCU is a big successful franchise that elevated Spidey's success? DC doesn't seem to have that boost. All right, well, thanks a lot for the question, John. So basically what John is referring to is, I've been saying for a while now, you gotta reboot the DCU. I think the DCU's got to be rebooted. Justice League showed us that the audience has begun to abandon the DCEU. That's not a matter of taste. That's a matter of fact. All right, when Justice League comes out, and it is the lowest grossing of all the DCEU films, then that is a referendum by the audience, the movie-going audience, saying, we've lost interest in this. That's not subjective, that's objective. That's a factual number, all right? You can look at the number of Justice League. You see that fewer people were interested in going to see it than any of the other DCEU movies to date, when Justice League should have been the top one by a mile. We're not talking subjective opinion anymore. We're talking facts. The fact is, fewer people were interested in seeing Justice League than any of the other films that have come out before it. That just points to the fact that less and less people have been interested in seeing what the DCEU is putting out. That's just a fact. That's not opinion. That's not whatever. That is a fact. Now, what is opinion is what should they do about it? Now we get back into subjective opinion. What should they do about this situation? And my belief on this has been very consistent. If they've lost interest and you put out a Justice League movie, again, that should have contended, not necessarily hit, but should have been a threat to hit the $2 billion mark, should have crossed $1 billion in its sleep, is a part of the most popular movie genre in the world right now in comic book movies, in a world where a lesser-known character like Black Panther comes out and makes more money in 4 days than you do in your entire theatrical run. That tells me you've dug a ditch. And you can spend years trying to win back the goodwill of the audience, or you can reboot. Because my belief is that reboots have been used to great success, particularly in the comic book genre. Batman has been rebooted. You know, Christopher Nolan came along and rebooted Batman. Look at the success. When everybody had given up on Batman after Bat Nipples and after, Bat Crotch Piece and all that kind of nonsense, right? Everybody freeze. After all of that, you would think Batman will never work again. You know what they did? They rebooted it. And look at the success they had as a result of rebooting Batman. Christopher Nolan comes along, they reboot it, huge success. They've rebooted Hulk a couple of times. They've rebooted the Hulk. Now Hulk is one of the most beloved characters in the MCU. They've rebooted Spider-Man after Spider-Man 3. It was they rebooted it and they gave us The Amazing Spider-Man, which was great. Then they did The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was not so great, kind of threw all their plans and things. So they said, you know what? They made a deal with the MCU. They coordinated with them. They rebooted the character again. And now this new Spider-Man, this new Peter Parker, is beloved. People love him. We have seen time and time again, not 100% success. Look at Fantastic Four. They rebooted that. Not so much success there. So it's certainly not a 100% success rate. But we have solid precedent showing us that particularly within the comic book genre, you can reboot and have great success. Great success. And I don't know why there are so many people who don't want the DCEU to succeed. I want the DCEU to have success. So I want them, so many people out there saying, no, don't reboot, no, don't reboot. So you don't want them to succeed? Fine. You cannot want them to succeed. I want them to succeed. And I think clearly the best avenue to put them in a position to succeed is rebooting. That is clearly, to me, the best, most optimal way for them to reach success again. Now, John asks the question, well, in the Spider-Man situation, we see Spider-Man, they rebooted him, but they rebooted him in the MCU. That gave Spider-Man a little bit of a leg up. And I'm not going to argue with that, to be honest with you. I think that's a totally legit thing to point out. However, rebooting Spider-Man Homecoming into an MCU universe wouldn't have done anything for it had people not gotten on board with the new Spider-Man. If they didn't like Tom Holland and they didn't like what they were doing with him, it didn't matter. You could have had Iron Man and Captain America and Thor and Black Widow and the Guardians of the Galaxy and freaking a reacquired Fantastic Four all in that Spider-Man Homecoming. Wouldn't have made one lick of difference if they didn't like Spider-Man. And they had given up on the Spider-Man that we got in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is unfortunate because I thought Andrew Garfield was a really good Spider-Man, but that's another topic for another time. So, understanding that none of it would have mattered if they didn't love this new guy, and because this was a reboot, and this was a new guy playing the role, and this was a starting fresh with Spider-Man, people went into it with an open mind. They didn't have to dig out of the hole of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 because it was reboot. It was a brand new character. They didn't have to dig out of the hole. They weren't starting behind. They were starting with a clean slate. And the audience embraced it and loved it. Again, let's go back to another DC property. Let's go back to Batman again. They didn't reboot Batman into a DCEU. They rebooted Batman on his own, and it succeeded. And where they have even more advantage, where I think Warner Brothers and DC is in even a more advantageous position here, is you aren't just rebooting a single character and trying to get a single character to work. You are getting to reboot with a clean slate your entire cinematic universe. I think that gives Warner Brothers and DC another advantage and another leg up. So again, I don't know why everybody doesn't want the DCEU to succeed. I don't know why these people who call themselves DC fans refuse to acknowledge that, hey, the DCEU is in trouble. It is in trouble. It doesn't matter if you like the movies, doesn't matter if I like the movies. It's in trouble. So I don't know why all these people who claim to be DC fans are so dead set against wanting to see the DCEU succeed with a reboot. I don't know why these people who claim to be DC fans hate the DCEU so much, that they just want to see it continue to flounder and to not have success. So I don't get it. I don't understand. We have clear precedents that even DC itself has used reboots to great success. I want to see them succeed. I want to see the mass audience love the DCEU the way they love the MCU. I want to see critics and audiences and box office have as big success as they should for these incredible characters in the DC universe. I want to see them enjoy that same success that other brand does, that Marvel has enjoyed. And the ground is rich and fertile soil right now because people are loving comic book movies right now. There's a fever pitch going on. We got Avengers coming out and all this kind of stuff. Now is as good a time as any to start with a clean slate. Or you can continue to dig your hole deeper, lose more and more of the favor with the audience that has already started to abandon you, making rebooting later, you're just going to have to reboot later anyway, rebooting later becomes even more difficult. Now is the time to start with a clean slate. And while I agree that Spider-Man, the one example of Spider-Man, and that example of successful rebooting, that benefited a little bit from being able to reboot into the MCU, but that wouldn't have mattered if they didn't embrace the Spider-Man character and weren't willing to give the Spider-Man character a fresh start. Batman is an example. Hulk is an example. We've seen it done. It can be done again, and I believe DC can do it with great success. But anyway, that's just my opinion on that. Okay, guys, with that stuff out of the way, we're going to go over to some live questions. But listen, guys, before we get to the live questions, I want to point out once again, you guys know I've rejected a lot of potential sponsorships because they're either sponsorships for things I don't actually use or sponsorships for things that I don't think my audience necessarily would find useful. However, the good folks over the Stardust app reach out to me. I love this app. I use this app. I watch people on this app. And basically what the app is you use this Stardust app to simply record 3 to 30-second reactions and reviews of television shows, trailers, or movies, and share them with people around the world. Now, here's where we here at the John Campea Show in particular are interested in, because here's what you can do. When you record your review of something, whether it's a recommendation or anything, record it, then hit the edit button, and just tag me on the screen, just simply at John Campea. Tag me on the screen at John Campea. That way, it guarantees I'll see your review, and then I get to pick out some of my favorites and show them on the John Campea Show. So tomorrow, we got a new fresh batch we're going to show in a little segment that we call What We're Watching. So go on over there, guys. Check that out. Once again, it is the Stardust app. You'll find a link for the Stardust app in the description below. Go check it out, and maybe you'll see your review reaction on the John Campea Show. Okay, with that out of the way, let's move on now to the live questions. You guys have been sending in a ton. I don't know if I'm going to have time to get through all of them, but if I don't get to yours that you've sent in, don't worry. It will show up on the companion video tomorrow when I do a companion video. All right. Ooh, throat's getting dry. Okay, let's dive into it. The first question today comes to us from our friend Chris Martin, and Chris Martin writes, John, I know you weren't a big fan of the Ninja Batman trailer. Dude, I cannot wait. I don't really watch anime, but this has me curious. Yeah, for those of you who have not seen it, I believe, what was it? What was the exact title of it? I can't remember, but there's this thing where Batman gets transported in time to feudal Japan, and there's a Joker there, and anyway, it's an interesting concept. I didn't jump up and down about it, but I don't jump up and down about any of the Marvel or DC animated stuff. There are some exceptions. There are some exceptions on both sides, the DC side and the Marvel side, but for the most part, I don't get too excited about, but a lot of people I know are. If you haven't seen the trailer for it yet, you should go check it out because it is very creative. So go check that out and follow Chris's lead there and see if you were interested in seeing it. Luna Comics writes, when Thor Ragnarok trades a good dramatic moment for comedy, everyone is okay with it. But when Star Wars The Last Jedi did the same, everyone got upset. Why? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. One, not everything is the same. You know, when Thor Ragnarok uses a dramatic moment to also have levity, they may have done it better. They did it really. Taika Waititi just is so good at that. Taika Waititi is so good with his humor that when he does it, he usually crushes it out of the park. Just because another movie tries to do the same thing doesn't mean they did it as well, and therefore it may not work with people when it did work with them with another movie. So it's not apples to apples necessarily here. They can be two different things. But at the same time, there are people who didn't like the fact that Thor Ragnarok used as much humor as it did. I loved it, but let's not pretend everybody loved it. Not everybody loved it. There are a number of very vocal people, because all film is subjective, that didn't appreciate the amount of humor in Thor Ragnarok. And thus, they also didn't appreciate the humor in The Last Jedi. So we've got a number of points of variance here between the situations. One, just because they used a joke in Thor Ragnarok, that doesn't mean the joke in Star Wars was anywhere near as good. And maybe it worked in Thor Ragnarok and didn't work there. The other one is there are a bunch of people who didn't like the fact that they used humor as much in Thor Ragnarok. So we got to keep that in mind when we're looking at questions like that. And then sometimes there's no explanation. Sometimes it's just, as you know, Luna, sometimes there's just no explanation. Chris Martin writes, I just watched the Won't You Be My Neighbor trailer for the Mr. Rogers documentary. It looks so great. Oh my God. When I went to go watch Isle of Dogs, because I've been meaning to watch the Won't You Be My Neighbor trailer, because everybody's telling me about it, right? But I just never got around to sitting down and watching it. So I go to see the Isle of Dogs the other night, and they play the Won't You Be My Neighbor trailer. Oh my God. I can't remember the last time I was this excited to see a documentary. It's just like, where is... You know what it did? It made me sad. Because I'm watching this trailer, I'm just thinking, oh my God, our world needs Mr. Rogers right now. Like, almost more than ever before, we need Mr. Rogers now. We need him in the world today. We need more people like him in the world today. And I just felt my heart break a little bit watching this. The trailer looks amazing. If you have not seen it, don't do what I did and waste time. As soon as this show's done today, stay on YouTube, look for the Mr. Rogers Won't You Be My Neighbor documentary trailer and watch it. And then I dare you to tell me you're not looking forward to it, because I cannot wait to see this damn thing. Chris also writes, heard you talk about Animaniacs a few days ago. I love that show. It was hilarious. I used to love the Animaniacs. I used to be able to recite the Nations of the World song. I can't anymore. There's Mexico, Canada, Jamaica, Peru, Costa Rica, Bolivia, and Argentina, Greece and El Salvador too. There's Bolivia. Anyway, I used to be able to do it, but I can't do it anymore. And of course, who didn't sing Lake Titicaca without a big smile and grin on their face? Of course, we all sang Lake Titicaca. Hello Nurse. I mean, everything, Pinky and the Brain came out of that, the Good Feathers. I loved the Animaniacs. They're supposed to be making some kind of a return, so we'll see if that turns out any good, but I love the Animaniacs, man. And you know what? They're so mature. There's like really mature adult humor hidden in the Animaniacs that if kids would never catch. And if you're an adult watching, you're going, how did they put that joke in a TV show for kids? Because they knew the kids would never get it. But there's like... Oh, God. Remember the fingerprints joke? Like, I remember hearing that joke going, oh my God, how do they do that joke in a show for kids? But it was so mature. Anyway, So I could talk about Animaniacs all day. Let's see. Michael Ginyard writes, will there be a Fantastic Voyage remake? It is surprising that they haven't tried it as of yet. Not Inner Space with Dennis Quaid. I don't think they will. I don't know that it would be appealing today. I just don't know that it would appeal to the market today. And that's the only thing about it. I just can't see if like a trailer came out for a Fantastic Voyage remake tomorrow, understanding the nature of the movie, that it would appeal to a lot of people. I ultimately, I think that's why they haven't, and I don't think they will. I could be totally wrong about that because they're looking at rebooting anything they can, but I just don't see it having broad market appeal at this point. AFC writes, you're in an episode of Gordon Ramsay. Story on how? Yes, I am in one of, Ann and I are both on an episode of Gordon Ramsay's, I can't remember the name of the show, Kitchen Nightmares? I think it's Kitchen Nightmares. Anyway, that we were on, and it was held here in town. Anyway, I have a friend who worked with Gordon Ramsay, and Ann and I love the Food Network, so we were very familiar with Gordon Ramsay. So they said, hey, Gordon's going to be doing an episode here. Do you want me to get you in? We said yes, and so that's it. So there we went. I had a great time. Some amazing food. We had some absolutely amazing food. Some of the best lasagna I've ever had that wasn't made by my nonna up in Canada. But yeah, so that's how we got on it. It's funny because whenever that show has a rerun, you can tell whenever there's a new rerun because I constantly get tweets with people sending me screenshots. I was watching Kitchen Nightmares and is that you? Is that you? And Ann is like, yep. So like clockwork, every couple of months it gets rerun and I get these tweets from people asking if it was us. And yes, it was us. We were on the show. Michael Ginyard writes, I would like to address the Venom talk. Could it be that the effects are not ready or they are trying to keep the character secret for the time being? Well, look, the whole thing about... Look, I said this before, when that Venom trailer came out, I felt that they showed us exactly enough. It was the first teaser for a film that doesn't come out till October. It was the first teaser, the first announcement trailer for a movie that wasn't even coming out till October. I didn't feel that they needed to show us full-blown Venom yet. I never felt that they did. Now, trailer number 2, that's different. Trailer number 2, you need to show us some Venom. I'm totally good with not showing him in trailer number 1 and just introducing the film and letting the world know this movie's coming. That's fine. I'm all good with that. But trailer number 2, I'm not going to be as easy on it if they don't give us a shot of Venom in trailer number 2. You don't have to make the entire trailer back-to-back Venom. You don't have to do that, but you got to show us full-blown Venom. You got to in the second trailer. Because the second trailer is the one that I really consider the first true trailer. Usually the first trailers are just more like announcements. The second trailer, you got to give us more meat. So I completely agree with you, Mike. I didn't think they needed to show us any more in the first trailer. There's some people complaining about it, and I would just say to them, look, it's the first trailer for a movie that ain't coming out till October. They don't need to show us a whole ton just yet. So I'm in agreement with you, but trailer number 2 is a different story. They better show us something more in trailer number 2. Time Lords writes, will we get a Yoda spin-off movie? I don't think so. I was worried about it for a while that we might. I have no interest in a Yoda spin-off movie. I want to see them get away from, oh, look, another movie about a younger version of a character we already know. I'm tired of those. Yeah, I'll go see, I'll go see Solo. Yeah, I'm kind of curious about the Obi-Wan one, but I really don't want a Yoda one. I'm really happy with Yoda as he is, as I know, so I don't want to see any more of that. Chris Martin writes, have you seen Super Size Me, the Morgan Spurlock side? Oh yeah, I've seen that. It was a great documentary. Made me cut back on the amount of McDonald's that I eat a great deal. Because, you know what? I've never really been, the past 7 or 8 years, or even longer, I've never really been, I don't know that I've ever had a Big Mac. If I did, I probably had it once and didn't like it. Never much. The main thing I would always get at McDonald's is the McChicken sandwich or chicken nuggets. Those would be it. But still, after seeing that movie, it even made me rethink even more about how much I hate McDonald's. Last of the Time Lords writes, could we get a live-action Captain Scarlet movie? To be honest with you, I have no idea who that is off the top of my head. Jay Pinkston writes, Who's a better MCU side character, Happy Hogan, Jon Favreau, or Luis, played by Michael Pena? Ooh, well, it all depends. Like, when you say better, what's your criteria? Narrative-wise, Happy Hogan's the more important character. Just flat entertainment-wise, Michael Pena's character is. So it really all depends. When you ask who's the better character, you got to be more specific about in what way. Better as in they have better ties in with the existing characters, because that's Happy Hogan. The history Happy Hogan and Tony have together, that's important, that's deep, whatever. So he's the better character. Are you saying better as in terms of pure entertainment value? Oh my God, I could watch an entire movie of Luis. Just, if you said you're putting out a 90-minute, an hour and a half long MCU movie just before Infinity War comes out. No, let's say just before Avengers 4 comes out. And that entire 90-minute movie is just Luis sitting there summarizing everything that's happened in the MCU up until the moment of Avengers 4, 90 minutes of him just telling his stories the way he does. I would buy the hell out of that movie. I would buy so many freaking tickets to that movie. I would buy it for opening day, the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday, the Monday through Friday again. I would see that movie a dozen times. And I think a lot of people would too. So if you're talking narrative-wise, Hap's the better character. Talking pure entertainment-wise, Luis is the better character. So it really all depends on which definition you're using for quote-unquote better. But I love both of those characters. Chris Martin writes, just rewatched Schnepp's Death of Superman Lives documentary. So well done. Also, the story ideas and concept art seemed amazing. Would have been an incredible film. Oh, I think it would have been a piece of shit film. Make no mistake about it. That movie would have been horrible. Just a train wreck of a horrible idea and a horrible movie. I have no doubt about that. However, the documentary was great. Can't emphasize how great the documentary is. And it is available to find online. You can order copies of it still. I would highly recommend, if you haven't seen that documentary yet, you absolutely should give it a shot because it's remarkable. Wonderful documentary. Jay Pinkston writes, Dominic Toretto would hold back Thanos' gauntlet. No. Dominic Toretto, first of all, when Thanos goes to punch Dominic Toretto, see what the writers of the Fast and Furious would have done is, the first thing that would have happened is the Infinity Gauntlet would have shattered into 100 pieces. Like once Dominic Toretto blocks Thanos punching him, the Infinity Gauntlet would have shattered into 100 pieces. Thanos would have broken his hand. Then Dom would have grabbed Thanos' hand, twisted around. Thanos would have begged Dominic for mercy. And then all the Infinity Stones would have rose in the air and spun in a circle like a halo around Dominic's head. Because he is the true chosen one of the universe. That's how the Fast and Furious writers would have written that scene. Make no mistake about it. Somebody draw that scene for me. Elam Rem writes, over under 35%, we see 2 Avengers die in Infinity War. I'll take the over. Well, you know what? No, let me back up on that. Who's an Avenger? Black Panther isn't an Avenger. He's not an Avenger. The Guardians of the Galaxy are not Avengers. Doctor Strange is not an Avenger. So right now, going into the movie officially, who are Avengers? Wanda's an Avenger. Vision, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Hulk, Thor, Cap. I mean, Ant-Man's not even an Avenger. Cap, Iron Man, War Machine. Who else was standing around there? So you got a bunch of them. So if we're talking specifically legit, literal Avengers, 2 of them dying, I'll take the under on 35%. Now, if we're talking about extending that to the other heroes of the MCU, like the Guardians of the Galaxy, like Ant-Man, like Doctor Strange, like a bunch of these other characters who are in the universe but not necessarily Avengers, Wasp even. Sneeze. Okay. Anyway, so what are the chances that more than 2 of the heroes of the MCU die? I'll take the over on 35%. Literal Avengers members, like card-carrying Avengers members, I'll take the under 35%. If you mean Avengers as in just the heroes of the MCU who are going to be in the Avengers movie, I'll take the over 35% on that. Let's see here. Karthik Rao writes, Black Panther, a relatively unknown superhero, has outgrossed a Star Wars saga movie. If you told me that a year ago, I would have laughed so hard. Well, I mean, a lot of movies, if you're talking about like Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, a lot of movies have outgrossed those. If you're talking about The Last Jedi, it actually hasn't outgrossed The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi is still about $100 million ahead of it. It may catch, although it's slowing down, but it may catch The Last Jedi, it may not. But as of right now, like, The Last Jedi made a little over 1.3 billion. Black Panther's at a little over 1.2 billion. So it's still about 100 million behind. But look, even if it doesn't catch Star Wars The Last Jedi, it's still remarkable. It is still remarkable how much money Black Panther... I mean, there's just not enough, words to describe the amazing result of Black Panther. It's just astounding. Whether it does or does not catch The Last Jedi, it's still amazing, regardless of how that ends up. Let's see. The Last of the Time Lords writes, people asked, where do X-Men go after Apocalypse? He is the most powerful. But now we get Dark Phoenix. Where after her could we get an X-Men Onslaught movie where they fight the villain Onslaught? Okay, so this brings up a couple of issues. Number one, for those of you who don't know who Onslaught is, he's not one of the more... A lot of you may have heard of Apocalypse, you've even heard of Phoenix. Who the hell is Onslaught? It's a complicated answer. The simplest way to answer about who is Onslaught is he's an astral plane kind of amalgamation of both Magneto and Charles Xavier combined into one incredibly stupid, powerful being. That's the simplest way to explain. And the design of the character looks really cool too. Anyway, maybe Onslaught. I mean, that's possible. You could do an Onslaught. That's an interesting idea. But here's the other idea, is that you don't always have to make the next villain bigger and badder. I've talked about this with the MCU before, but not every movie has to be about saving the universe. Sometimes it can be about saving the city, or saving the neighborhood, or saving the person. It's okay to have a movie where the fate of the universe isn't at stake. A lot of the greatest movies ever are just about trying to save the child, trying to save the one child. And fewer movies will have deeper senses of stakes and consequences. And that when really what's at stake is the life of one child, the life of a family, the health and the soul of the neighborhood or the city. It doesn't always have to be the world is at stake. Every once in a while, you got to change gears. I would love to see the X-Men universe change gears and go from saving the world to maybe saving one person. There's a mission to save one person. Or to stop one bad thing that isn't the destruction of the universe, but a race against time to stop one bad thing from happening. It can't always be about the universe being at stake. You got to change up gears once in a while. So where do you go after Dark Phoenix? You could go Onslaught. There's an interesting story to tell there with Onslaught. Or you could change gears and bring it down a notch or two. Give us a great movie where the stakes aren't the universe, because we're going to get bored of that real fast. So I think it's time for them to change gears. That's kind of what I think. Tyler writes, will we get a Fast and Furious 9? Well, they've already said many times that we are. Curtis Lopez writes, which Peter Pan movie is better, the Disney classic or Hook? It all depends who you ask. I mean, I love Hook, but I'm the wrong guy to ask because I like Hook a lot more than most people do. I love Hook. And I like the animated Peter Pan. I like the original Peter Pan. I do. I like it, but I love Hook. But I think if you ask 100 other people, 90 out of the 100 will probably say the animated Peter Pan. But if you're asking just me, it's Hook. But I'm acknowledging most people would disagree with me on that. For some reason, I'm a freak that likes that movie a little bit more than most people do. All right. Next question comes to us from Lori Scott, who writes, over under 20% Star-Lord meets his grandpa in Infinity War. Oh gosh. Well, I mean, if he was going to meet his grandpa, the grandfather, I forget the actor's name, but the guy who plays Peter's grandfather in the first Guardians movie is an actor that director James Gunn has worked with a couple of times, including in his James Gunn's magnificent film Slither, where he plays the mayor of the town. So the guy who plays the mayor in Slither also plays Peter's grandfather in that opening scene of Guardians of the Galaxy. So I think if they were going to have him back, I think it would probably be in a movie that James Gunn himself is directing. I have a feeling. I don't think they're going to spend... Look, the movie is only 2.5 hours long. And you got 4,500 characters. I don't think there is time to have this big side story where Peter comes and meets his grandfather. I don't think there's time in the movie for it. So if they were to do that, I think it would make more sense that it would happen in a movie that James Gunn, a director who likes working with that actor particularly, James Gunn is directing, which would be like a Guardians 3. So I think there's a better chance for that to happen in Guardians 3 if it's going to happen at all. So I will take the under on the 20%. Interesting question though, Lori. All right, next one comes to us from Franklin Donahue, who writes, John, do you foresee there being a chance that Wakanda is completely destroyed in Avengers 3/4? And do you think this would make the Black Panther series more or less interesting? Well, I don't think there's really a chance that Wakanda gets destroyed. Although, the ending of Black Panther causes a problem for the MCU. A few months before Black Panther came out, somebody asked me live, said, John, what do you think of the chances that by the end of Black Panther, T'Challa just takes Wakanda public and lets the world know what Wakanda really is and opens up the doors and starts sharing technology? And what I said before Black Panther came out was, I don't think that'll happen. I was wrong, clearly. But I said, I don't think that'll happen because that will cause a problem with the MCU, because now if all of a sudden a Wakanda with all this 10 years ahead of everything else advanced technology comes out, that changes the world. Like right now, the world of the MCU looks like our world, just with superheroes in it. A Wakanda comes out of the shadows, that changes what the entire world looks like. And really, you got to ask yourself a question. If, Wakanda has had this mountain of vibranium for 1,000 years, and they've still, as Claw puts it, barely have scratched the surface of it, then you're in a situation where, why doesn't everybody on the police force now have vibranium suits? Why doesn't Iron Man now make his suit out of vibranium and become invincible? Why doesn't every member of the Avengers have fully vibranium outfits? I mean, Wakanda's got literally a mountain of it that they've barely even scratched the surface of it in 1,000 years. It causes a problem. So in asking, hey, what are the chances that they just wipe out Wakanda? That would address that issue. It would make it so the entire world of the MCU doesn't have to change overnight. It would address that issue. It would also be incredibly destructive on Black Panther. Like, it would just devastate him. His whole country. He as king, under his rule, Wakanda gets destroyed. I mean, that would mess with them a lot. It would also limit the amount of vibranium, because the thing about vibranium is special because there's supposed to be so little of it. But apparently now in Wakanda, there's enough vibranium for everybody to have, 15 pairs of vibranium panties if they want, right? Everybody's got vibranium panties. Woo! Because there's just so much of it now. It would address that problem. I still don't think they're going to wipe out Wakanda. But maybe they do something that they get rid of most of the vibranium. Maybe they do something to get rid of most of the vibranium, because that much vibranium being in the world of the MCU changes things, and it could cause some complications. Interesting question, Franklin. Really interesting question. All right, Justin T writes, hey, John, what are the chances that Cap is a Skrull? Very little. It wouldn't make any sense for the narrative up until this point. Plus, it's a little too inside baseball. You have to do a lot of introduction of Skrulls and everything for doing something like that to not completely piss off the audience. You start introducing Skrulls, you start giving us some background on them, blah, 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 and then you do a twist like that. Maybe that works, but I really don't think the chances are very high. Let's see. Chris Martin writes, have you seen any of the Comedy Central roasts? The Charlie Sheen one is hilarious. Seth MacFarlane is a great roast master. I think it was Comedy Central. The best one I've ever seen where everybody was just on fire, was the roast of James Franco. The roast of James Franco was absolutely hilarious. And I have never seen Jonah Hill in a movie or anything else as good as he was at that roast. If you haven't seen the roast of James Franco, I highly recommend you check it out because it is all sorts of hilarious. Check it out. Let's see. Chris Martin also writes, thoughts on Seth MacFarlane when he hosted the Oscars? I thought he was great. Do you think there's a chance he might do it again? I personally loved Seth MacFarlane hosting the Oscars. I thought he did a masterful job. However, not everybody agreed. There were a lot of people that didn't like the job he did. I thought everybody was crazy because I thought he was terrific as a host. He's a triple threat. He can sing, he can dance, he can do all the entertaining. He wasn't afraid to push the envelope a little bit, but some people thought it didn't quite work for the Oscars. Fine. That's unfortunate. I loved him as a host. I would love to see him back as a host, but I think the chances of him hosting again are slim to none. And I'll take out slim, just none. I don't think there's any chance they invite him back to do it again, which I think is really unfortunate because I got a big kick out of him hosting that. Let's see. A whole bunch more questions came in. Got to go back. Wow, there are a lot of questions. Sorry, I keep having to go back more and more and more. I will get it at some point. Holy crap. Oh, here we go. Okay. So, wow, guys, you guys have sent in an assload of questions. So here's what I'm going to tell you. We've only got about 3 minutes left in the show. So if you have sent in a live question that does not get addressed on today's show, don't worry about it. I'm going to copy all the questions you guys have sent in. And on tomorrow's companion video, I will address all of them. So every question you guys have sent in will get answered, just maybe not on the live show here. So let me kick it into overdrive and try to get through as many more of these live ones here as we've got. Lori Scott writes, hey John, Power Pack was one of my favorite Marvel properties when I was a kid. Over under 25% that they joined the MCU in the next 10 years. Oh, in the next 10 years? Wow, anything can happen in 10 years. I'm still take the under on it. Like this group of kids who their fathers were scientists and came up with this power source that could destroy the world. Anyway, I'll take the under. I just don't see how it fits into what the MCU is. But again, you're throwing out a number, Lori, like 10 years? I mean, who knows where the MCU is? So that makes it more interesting, but still, I'll take the under on that. DC Patience writes, where do you get your movie news? I was interested in which sources you read and trust the most. Well, the ones I read and trust the most are, the top two are Hollywood Reporter and Variety. Those are the ones I trust the most. They check, double check, triple check, quadruple check, really in-depth researching and stuff. When they say something, they're not 100%, nobody's 100%, but you can pretty much take it to the bank when they. Then there are other films like Deadline, Off and On Again, The Wrap. The Wrap has become questionable to me. I used to put The Wrap up on like the second run, like Hollywood Reporter, Variety. Then the next run down, like Deadline and The Wrap. I still have Deadline there, but I think The Wrap has dropped down a little bit, but still a pretty good one. Still a pretty good one. Then you got sites like, I really have always appreciated Coming Soon. It's a good site. Cinema Blend's a good site. Twitter. I mean, I get, a lot of times I get my news when it breaks, and before I've ever had a chance to even read about it breaking, I've got a bunch of you guys, thank God, a bunch of you guys tweeting it to me and letting me know about it. So I get a lot of my breaking news from there as well, and then I look into it. So those are some of the places that I get a lot of my movie news from, and that I highly suggest you check out all those sources. I just like reading them. Empire magazines and other, I just like reading them. Entertainment Weekly. The Kosan writes, ignoring the allegations towards Lasseter, which of these three Disney studio heads ran their studio the best? Feige, Kennedy, or Lasseter? I'm going to take Lasseter. It's hard to argue against the success that Feige's had. But under Lasseter, Pixar basically, like, I think there was a stretch where like 7 out of 10 years, there was this 10-year stretch where 7 of those years, Pixar movies were the #1 critically rated films of the year. that is unprecedented success. Unprecedented. Now, if you just want to talk about amount of money made and stuff like that, you go Feige. But honestly, if I had to pick right now, one out of those three, I'm taking Lasseter, to be honest with you. Ben Heusa writes, are you a fan of Michael Jordan's Space Jam? I sure am. Yes, but not as big as most people. Like, it's not, I am shocked how many of my friends are like, one of their fondest childhood memories is watching Space Jam. To me, it's like, I liked it, but not, I mean, it wasn't a huge influence on my life, but a lot of people love it. Laurie Scott writes, oh, John, watching you has made me so knowledgeable about movies that coworkers expect me to have the latest info. I refer them to your channel. Well, thank you so much, Laura. And you know, I used to joke around in saying this, but it's true. One of my goals here in this show is that you are the smartest person. You know more and have more context and more information about what's going on in the world of movie news than any of your friends do. So when you're talking about your friends, you have more idea of the broader context and everything that's going on in the world of movie news. That's kind of one of my goals. So thank you, Lori, for writing that. I really appreciate that. LF Drumming writes, do you think we'll hear the Guardians theme in Infinity War? I think the chances are we will hear smatterings of it. Like a 4-second few bars of it, like when they come on screen, but like the full-blown theme, no, but I do think we'll hear something like that. I do. Ben Heusa writes, have you ever watched the classic 80s sitcom Three's Company with, of course, the late, great John Ritter? In my opinion, a very funny show. Me and my mom enjoyed it. I used to watch reruns of that when I was like in my 20s. I loved that show. It was ahead of its time. It was so far ahead of its time. It was a little bit risque. It was a little bit mature, but it was funny. It was so sharp and funny. So it was Suzanne Summers, and I can't remember the girl who played Janet. DeWitt was her last name. I'm trying to remember her first name. And then you had Don Knotts join the cast a little bit later after that. I can't remember the name of the actors who played the landlord couples before that, but it was one of the all-time great shows. One of the all-time great shows. Clearly top 20 sitcoms of all time, I think. Laurie Scott writes, Mortal Kombat equals your guilty pleasure. Doom is mine. Really? Doom? All film is subjective. I've never heard somebody say Doom is one of their guilty pleasures. With Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Carl Urban. Okay, I've never heard somebody say Doom, but that's why that makes it a perfect example of a guilty pleasure. That's a great example of what a guilty pleasure then is, Lori. So there you go. Let's see. Koa1708 writes, I feel like it's a social faux pas to go to the movies alone. Notice how you barely see it in the theaters. Well, yeah, I think a lot of people feel awkward about going to the movies alone or going to a restaurant alone or whatever. I don't give a fuck. I go to movies alone all the time. I like going to the movies alone. I mean, don't get me wrong. I prefer going with somebody else because having somebody talk with about the movie as soon as you come out of it, I love that. But hey, if I got nobody around and it's just me around, I'll go to the movie, sure. Run down there, pull up my Cinemia card, pull up my Movie Pass card, whatever. Go in, watch a movie, enjoy myself. I have no problem with it, and you shouldn't have a problem with it either. Okay, but you're right. There is a social stigma to it, but I think that's changing. Alt Productions writes, did you watch Dexter? Would you like to see a revival? Yes, I loved Dexter. I loved that show. It had its hit and miss seasons. There were seasons, and you know, the series finale was questionable. Yes, I would love to see a revival of it. I would absolutely love to see a revival of it. I loved that show, and I thought Hall was fantastic in it. Let's see. Mr. Film writes, had a dream that Infinity War sucked. I woke up in a bad mood. Hey, look, guys. It's the same as every movie. Every movie could be the best movie you've ever seen in your life, and every movie could be the worst movie you've ever seen in your life. There is a possibility, however unlikely, to quote Star Wars, there is a possibility, however unlikely, that Infinity War will disappoint. And it will suck. You just got to be prepared for that. You just do. It's unlikely, but you got to be a little bit prepared for that. Every movie could be bad. No matter how great it looks, no matter how good the previous ones have been, every movie could end up being disappointing. So I don't think it'll be. I'm looking forward to it a hell of a lot, but every movie. And you know, Marvel films are no exception. Let's see. KW Garrett 83 writes, considering what happened with Avatar sequels, why didn't we get Titanic 2, 3, 4, and 5? We were robbed. Kidding. Though a True Lies sequel would have been nice. Dude, I wanted a True Lies sequel so bad for so long. It's just too late now. But hey, look, if they announce tomorrow that James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tom Arnold, whoever else involved, they were all going to come back and do a True Lies 2, I would be all for it. I mean, it's never going to happen at this point, but man, you and me, but I wanted a True Lies 2 so bad for so long. I wanted to visit those characters again, but hey, it is what it is. Koba writes, A Fistful of Dollars, 1964, for a few dollars more, 1965, and The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, 1966. Compared to other trilogies. In what way? Like, compare, it was a great trilogy. I don't know what you're asking. Compared to other trilogies, I don't. Where do you want to start? I mean, yeah, great trilogy. Is it like in the top 5 trilogies of all time? I don't think so. I don't think it quite equals up to the Godfather trilogy, Toy Story, Lord of the Rings. I don't think it equals up, obviously, to the Star Wars trilogy. And there are a few others as well. I wouldn't rank them up there, but yeah, solid trio of films for sure. Uchilla Obito writes, best Marvel hero portrayal in the MCU other than its Trinity. Mine's Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. Well, I don't know who you mean by its Trinity. You got to be, so do you include Chris Evans in that? Do you include Chris Hemsworth? I'm going to assume you mean Robert Downey Jr. For me, outside of those big ones, I think Benedict was great as Doctor Strange, but for me, it's Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. Paul Rudd as Ant-Man was so great. I mean, Chris Pine as Star-Lord is another really great one. Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa is another. I mean, it's loaded with great ones, but I'll probably go Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd as Ant-Man is the one I'll take on that. Good question, though. Kalis Menon writes, will they ever make a movie about the survivors who survived the Parkland shooting? I think it would be a great idea and deeply inspiring. Oh, I'm sure. Of that I have no idea. Whenever you get these inspiring true stories, especially things where something good comes out of something tragic, I think those are ripe for things to be made in movies. I don't think you'll see it in the next few months, but yeah, I do think someone's going to make a movie about that. Whether it's a documentary, live narrative, something like that, it would be, especially if these kids can really make the kind of change that we hope they can make. Lee Cameron writes, thoughts on the Collateral movie? I loved it. Or we're talking about the one with Tom Cruise. Yeah, fantastic movie. Very underrated. And one of those movies that I'm glad you're bringing it up, Lee. Maybe you can jump on the Stardust app and make a recommendation of it, because it's one of those movies that I find that still a lot of people have not checked out and watched. It is an underrated film. I think it's a very, very good movie. Good recommendation. Christian Reddy writes, best actor without an Oscar? Harrison Ford? Harrison Ford's a great actor. He's a great actor. But when you put him up against a lot of the other names that come up, I don't know that he's in the conversation for it. I mean, all film is subjective. Maybe he is for you. That's great. I bet, but for me, there's just still 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 other actors that I would put on the list ahead of him. But I'm sure for a lot of people, Harrison Ford is a name that would have to be considered. Yeah, it is kind of funny when you think about that. Harrison Ford doesn't have an Academy Award. I'm not even sure how many nominations he has, to be honest. Maybe one name writes, do you think we'll get an Eminem biopic? Wasn't that called 8 Mile? I mean, wasn't that kind of autographical? Is that the right word? Wasn't that kind of a biography in a way? So I think the answer might be we already kind of do have one. Anthony R. writes, I know you like to review cinematic scenes from games time to time. Will you consider reviewing scenes from the new Spidey game later this year? Depends. If I get enough people asking me for it, maybe I'll do it. It's not on my radar right now, but if enough people ask for it, I probably will. Uchiha Obito writes, best Marvel villain portrayal in the MCU other than Loki. It has to be Hugo Weaving's Red Skull for me. He looks like he came out of the comic book page. I will agree with you. A lot of people will say Michael B. Jordan is Killmonger, and he was great. Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger was awesome, but I agree with you. It is Hugo Weaving as Red Skull. That to me is my next favorite. Probably after that, then would come Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger. Then after that would probably be Cate Blanchett, one of the greatest actresses in the world, as Hela. But yeah, I would put Hugo Weaving's Red Skull number 2. Okay, let's see. Just a couple more. I'm going a little bit overtime here because you guys sent in so many questions. I'll get down to D's question. That'll be the last one I take. Thoughts on Boyega saying he's done with sci-fi and wants to do dramas. Future Oscar winner? Also, whatever happened to Boyega coming on the council? Don't know, don't care about the council thing. As far as being done with sci-fi films, to be honest with you, I haven't heard him. Say that. Future Oscar winner, I don't know. He was very good in Detroit. Like, really good in Detroit. And I thought he was quite good in Pacific Rim, too. He is a serviceable lead for a movie. He definitely is. And you can't say that about a lot of actors. Do I see Oscars in his future? I don't know. Let's put it this way. I haven't seen that level out of him yet. He's very good. Like I said, I was so impressed with him in Detroit, but was he Oscar level in Detroit? I didn't think so. I haven't seen him do anything yet that makes me think of him as an Oscar threat. That being said, he's still young. He could just get better and better. So let's wait and see. But as far as the comments you're referring to, I haven't read those comments myself directly, so I can't really comment on them. Do I see him right now having Oscars in his future? Not right now, I don't. I have to see him be able to take it to the next level. He's very good. I would be thrilled to have him in any movie I did, but as if in Oscar talk, I need to see him take that he's capable of taking it to another level. Let's see. Angel Chang writes, hate all the kids in Jurassic Park movies. Well, see, I don't know. See, the kids in the Jurassic Park movies, particularly the first one, they served important narrative purpose. They were a living, breathing part of the entire narrative. And so I saw their function in there, and I liked them in there. That's an example, I think, of it being done right. But for you, Angel, they drove you crazy, and all film's subjective, so nothing wrong with that. If they drove you crazy, nothing wrong with that. Okay, and the last question I will take today, and don't worry guys, every other question that got asked will be on the companion video tomorrow, comes to us from DC Patience, who writes, Iron Man and or Captain America, you think they become an ongoing franchise like Mission Impossible, Indiana Jones, or James Bond? If so, your ideas to make it awesome. Well, I mean, I can't sit down here, D, and go into a full script writing session about where do we take these characters. But I mean, look, Iron Man has already both Iron Man and Captain America have kind of already been that. I mean, Captain America has been a staple in the Avengers films. On top of that, like his trilogy of films, like First Avenger, Winter Soldier, Civil War, probably one of the best trilogies ever made. Not Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, you know, Toy Story, Godfather level, but in the conversation. So they already kind of are that. Can these characters continue? I believe absolutely. You know, we talked about that a little bit earlier in this show. I do believe they can absolutely continue. I do believe they absolutely will continue. How much further? We'll have to wait and find out. All right, guys, that will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Again, we take things a lot more casually here on the weekends. We don't do a movie news feed or anything, but the regular show picks up tomorrow morning. Make sure you come back and join us for the John Campea Show tomorrow morning. Of course, a little bit later today, we got a few other videos coming as well. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. My name is John Campea. Thanks so much for being here. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, and until my next video, bye-bye.